Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome into Guest Blade episode number 36. Today we're going to be taking a look at a pair of knives from Carson Tech Lab, which is Carson Technical Laboratories. And these were sent to me by Mr. Ulyan Chesnikov, who is a Russian knife dealer, who happened to have gotten a a nice deal with Carson Tech Lab, and he carries some of their products now, and he's going to be continuing to carry more in the future. I will give you a link down below to his Instagram account, and you guys can check him out there and find out all the information you need to know about maybe going about purchasing some of these. I had heard about Carson Tech Lab, I guess about 7 or 8 months ago. I'd accidentally come across one of their knives as I was searching for an integral, and I was looking at the Peter Vicente Snafu and at the Druid, and this odd knife popped up called the Granite Queen that I'd never heard of before, made by somebody I'd never heard of. So I started doing some research and really wasn't able to return much of anything in the way of research. So I did find that they had a Facebook page, so I reached out to them, and I don't recall who it was that responded to me. But I said, I'd love to get my hands on one of your knives to do a review on, possibly to purchase. Let me, what's the price of these things, and where are they made? He says, these are manufactured in China, and at the time that particular knife was $800. And I was like, whoa, red flags went up. $800 made in China knife. Okay, thank you very much. And he didn't seem to have any interest in having me review them. So that's totally fine. Everybody is, certainly entitled to their opinion on people who do knife reviews. That's great. But I'm glad that Ulyan gave me the opportunity to review these. These are actually very, very interesting knives, very unique knives. So what you're looking at, the two different knives here. One is called the Exorcist, and that is the flipper right here. Give you a quick close-up look at it before we get off into the main video here. There's some interesting titanium carving there, nice jimping on the back. Rudimentary kind of pocket clip. Notice the lock bar cut out there. We'll be getting to that in a moment. And this little guy right here. You're thinking, what in the hell? It's not an over-travel stop because the monstrously oversized pivot is what's taking care of that. But we'll get to it again in a minute. So there is the Exorcist. And this one, the one that I kind of favor, this is the Griffin. And which is funny because I'm typically going to pick a flipper over a standard folder any day of the week. But there's something about the smoothness and the cleanliness of this overall design. And I strongly, I should say, prefer this pivot over the other pivot. I'm also a fan of button locks if they're done right, and you'll see what that is here in a moment. So there's a quickie look at the knives closed. Now, before I get into the price, I want to kind of talk about the knives individually, then we'll go back to the price, then we'll go back into the manufacturing origins. So let's get these bad boys open. Yeah, they do open with authority. And look at this. Now, I'm not even going to hold it straight up and down. I'm just going to hold it flat on just a little bit of an angle. That's how smooth these are. And the reason for that is they're using a multi-row bearing system. Now, before you go getting all excited, thinking of maybe the Shirogorov multi-row bearing system, it's not quite that intricate. All it is, it's 12 ball bearings set into 2 rows, an inner row and then an outer row. So you have 6 tightened up in the center and 6 spaced out larger around the pivot. And they do seem to be very effective. These are very smooth knives as far as their basic operation. I think they could have utilized them a little bit better. And I'll explain. Well, you know what? I'll explain it now. I don't have to wait till later. Had they just simply polished the contact areas that the ball bearings are coming in contact with, you would actually get a glass-like smoothness. You're not getting, it is quick, okay, and it is fast, and it will open and close on its own pretty much. But you can actually feel the bearings rolling against the surfaces of the steel. And if they had taken that area back there in the blade and mirror polished it, or even did a really nice fine satin, something besides the stonewash, then what they would have actually gotten was something a lot more smooth to the overall feel. I'm also not sure how rough the actual pivot area itself is. It may need a little bit of extra fit and finish going on in there as well. Now, the thing with Carson is he's a very innovative person. And while these look like very simple, very basic knives, there's actually quite a bit of innovative technology built in. Now, whether you feel it's necessary technology or not, that's entirely up to you. But he is putting a lot of work into these. So let's focus on one at a time. We'll start with, again, my favorite, the Griffin. What you're getting into here is a really nice button lock system. Button locks are great because they're almost completely fail-proof. It is nearly impossible to get that lock to fail. Once that button has popped out fully and put itself into place in the notch in the blade, it is as solid as anything can possibly be. I mean, you want to talk about the most solid locks, a lot of people are going to talk about the compression lock by Spyderco. They're going to talk about the Axis lock by Benchmade. They're going to talk about the Triad lock by Cold Steel, which is basically just a type of back lock. And they're all going to be really, really good systems. But this is, it's been around a lot longer, and it really has proven itself to be extraordinarily tough. Now, what they've also done for people that have that fear of a button lock, that while I'm using it, I'm going to somehow disengage that lock and crush my fingers, or not crush, but cut my fingers, what Carson has actually done has created a safety switch. So once that's engaged, and it's very simple, you watch, it's just engaging that lock. So you can actually touch it and you can feel it move, but it will not let it disengage. Because you could see the larger area there goes up against the slide switch. And I'm doing this also with my fingers in the way. So, I mean, I've proven to myself already this thing is just almost fail-safe. Again, I don't ever want to give a complete absolute of anything, but that's about as fail-safe as you can possibly get. So if you've ever avoided a button lock simply because you're afraid that you're going to hit it at some point while you're using the knife, then you don't have that concern anymore. Overall construction is nice. 6AL4V titanium, done in a really, really nice stone wash. They've done some nice contouring here. Makes it pretty comfortable in the hands. And you'll notice that there's really not a lot of hardware going on besides the button lock, of course. That would be the extraneous piece that you're not typically accustomed to seeing. Really, your only points of contact are going to be your pivot, which is a beautiful pivot. I wish more makers and more brands would put this much thought and machine work into their pivots. I mean, there are knives out there for $2,000 that don't have pivots anywhere near that creative. And the other point of contact is the single standoff in the rear. Plenty of clearance. I don't know if I can quite get the right. There we go. Plenty of clearance between the standoff and the blade. No issues there. You see it is perfectly centered. Remember, this is a production knife, not a hand-built custom. So that's really kind of a big deal to get this degree of quality. Nice clean finishing work around the back side of the blade. And there is your stop pin right there. Pretty thick and beefy stop pin for the size of knife this is. This is about a 3.5-inch blade. So it's not a tremendously huge knife. The only thing I don't like, this cutout here, while it looks cool and it maintains the functionality of a Spidey hole and clearly avoids any legal issues with Spyderco by making it not look like a Spidey hole, is unfortunately its downfall. You have a blade that goes very far into the frame, so you don't have a lot of room here for your thumb to drop in. The other thing is, while they have recessed or relieved areas off of the titanium to allow your thumb to go into place, they haven't recessed it in enough or back enough. So your thumb kind of wants to overshoot it, and it's not actually very easy to get your thumb in there to either flick or even to open. And if you're actually going to open it slowly, you actually feel the shape of this as the fat of your thumb goes in and your finger twists around. I'm not a fan of that. If that were a larger opening and or there was a much more recessed area here to give you easier access, this would be a lot more reliable on the deployment. As it stands, the few times I played with it, pulled it out real quick, my thumb would slip off a few times. It wasn't 100% reliable. But that's my only bitch and complaint about this knife, besides obviously the cheap pocket clip. Now, great retention, nice size, it does the job, but honestly, if you're going to put this much detail work into your pivot, you would kind of expect the same amount of work in the pocket clip. All right, so it's slim, it's lightweight, it's very easy to carry. As I understand it, they make two sizes, kind of a medium and a large. I believe this is the smaller of the two, if I'm not mistaken. I might be. There could be a 3-inch version for all I know. So there you go. That is my personal favorite of the two, the Griffin. Now let's get to the Exorcist. All right. I do not like this knife. I just don't. The ergonomics are nice. It feels good. They've done some really nice shaping of the handle. And that's really about it for me. I'm not a fan of the blade shape. It does flip well. I will give it that. I shouldn't discount that. It does flip very well for having almost no detent. It's a very weak detent. I mean, you can just barely breathe on it and it pops open. Yet somehow it flips like a little rocket. Really impressive work on that. And a lot of that's going to be the bearings. Here's why I don't like it. And this is purely a personal preference. This is not a quality thing. I think it is butt-ass ugly. It's got, remember those old, they called them Mooney hubcaps? That's what that reminds me of. It's just big. It's obnoxious. It doesn't flow with the design of the knife in any way, shape, or form. I'm not crazy about the pattern here. Again, that's a personal preference. You do have 3 points of contact, your pivot, and 2 standoffs on this one. It's going to be nice and sturdy. And I'm not crazy about the locking mechanism. Now, you're looking at it going, well, there's nothing particularly different here. It's not quite as innovative as this. Actually, it is. It's a really good system. I just personally don't like it. If you've ever worried about your lock bar somehow being accidentally disengaged, which I'm not sure how many times it's actually happened to real human beings in the real world, I don't know. What he has done is he has created this little safety mechanism right here. So when the blade is open, lock is engaged, and there is your full lock up there. That's about, let's say about 30% lock up if I'm not mistaken. It's only going to move a little bit. And what's happening is this piece here is engaging that pivot plate. So what you do, it's got a little bit of jimping right here. It's pretty sharp. You can either grab it with your fingernail, which really is the preferred method, or just with the meat of your thumb. You have to pull it down, and then that allows the lock bar to move over. So until you disengage that, you cannot disengage the lock. Now, that's a cool system in theory, and I'm sure it is a lot safer. The problem is, no other knife that I own has anything like that. So that means every frame lock, every liner lock, every bolster lock that I have, I'm used to just hitting it and closing it, and that's it. Now I have an extra step that I'm not thinking about. And I mean, it depends on your personality, really. One of the things that we were always taught in self-defense with handguns is try not to carry a multitude of different systems on a regular basis. If you're going to carry a 1911, try to always carry a 1911 as your personal defensive pistol. If you're always going to carry a Glock, try to only carry that type of action. If you're only going to carry, big thing for me was I carry a P7 M8, which is a squeeze cocker. Don't intermix a lot of different daily carries with different systems, because God forbid that one time you have to go to reach for your weapon to defend your life, muscle memory takes over, and you might, I don't know, maybe you got the 1911 and in your head you think you're carrying, I don't know, the P7, and you're not going to do the things that you need to do. You're going to fumble with it. You know, instead of flipping down that safety and pulling the trigger, maybe you're going to try to do something else, or you're thinking it's a Glock and you're just going to pull the trigger. That's the confusion that you can have, your body's system can possibly have. And that's what I'm afraid of with this. Every time I'm just going to go like this, and then I got to stop and take that extra second and go, oh, duh, I'm carrying the Carson today. I've got to slide that down out of the way. Now, that's for the guy that has a whole bunch of different knives and carrying them in a regular rotation. If this is going to be your primary carry knife, then that's probably going to be less of a concern for you. Because once you've adapted to this, you're always going to do that, and you're not going to have any issues. So again, maybe your thought process is different than mine. The things I do like, I love that creative lock bar cutout. I like to see the artistry as it's been done. And the relief cut, it's not just an ugly standard relief cut. He's done it in a way to keep a clean design. So overall, of the two, I would much rather have this one. And I really wish it was a flipper. This would be just about the perfect EDC. Now, let's talk about the manufacturing and the prices. Yes, they are manufactured in China in a production facility, but here's the difference between them and, well, pretty much everybody else. They're doing innovative things. They're using innovative materials. I'll talk about the N77 steel here in a moment. What they're doing, and you'll have to excuse, I think my 14-month-old child is screaming in the background somewhere. They're doing their own in-house heat treat and cryo quenching. So they're doing the cryogenic hardening. All that is done in-house. They're not farming it out to someone else. So they're able to keep that quality control in-house. That's a really big deal, especially when they start using exotic steels. And they use a lot of different stuff. You know, they'll use RWL34, they'll use S90, S30, S35VN, and the Nitrobe 77. There's a whole bunch of different things, M390 as well. And they're doing all their own assembly. So Carson is doing the design, and then his facility is doing all of the work. And that keeps it a little bit closer to mid-tech than production. Now, I don't know what kind of production numbers they're putting out. I don't know if they're making 500 of these a year or 5,000 of these a year. I have no way of knowing these things. They're doing nice work with their packaging. It's not tremendously expensive. It's not like hand-carved wood or anything, but it's a nice presentation when you get this box open with the magnetic lid. You know, this is a lot like what Boker does on the Boker Plus. It's just nice, presentable packaging. I kind of dig that. They're doing nice design work. They're using good materials. The titanium is premium 6Al4V titanium. And the steel, we were talking just a second ago about the Nitrobe 77. The problem with that is Aerosteel, which is the company that actually makes it, ERA, Aerosteel, they canceled the production of this steel. And I'm not really sure why. I could speculate all I want, but the pure truth is I really don't know why. Maybe it's because a lot of you are scratching your head going, I've never heard of it. Maybe it's because nobody was really using it. And that's obviously going to be, you know, a very strong reason for discontinuing any product. But it was looking to be a really promising choice for knife makers because it's almost entirely corrosion proof. You know, and there are not that many steels. You talk about cobalt steel, you talk about SM100, which isn't really steel anyway. You talk about Stellite 6K. There are only a handful of truly, completely non-corrosive steels that are being used for knife making. So it was really nice having this extra option. The thing is, what they're doing is they're using nitrogen to replace the carbon in the steel. Meaning you don't have to immensely increase the chromium in the alloy to achieve that amazing corrosion resistance. What happens in typical alloys is when you increase the chromium content so that you can get that corrosion resistance, you end up making the steel softer. Then you end up going back up and maybe you're going to go back and up the carbon. Okay, now that brings, brings the hardness back up, but now you're reducing, your wear resistance. So there's always going to be a trade-off. So by introducing the replacing the carbon, you don't have to worry about upping and upping and upping and upping on that chromium. You can leave the chromium where it would have been typical in that alloy. So all it's left to do is give you that corrosion resistance, and you're going to get great wear resistance and all that kind of great stuff, all wrapped up into one. Now that, in theory, is what was supposed to be happening. Maybe it failed because it wasn't 100% true, or maybe it failed just because it just didn't catch on. So I'm not sure which, but what they're going to be doing with Carson is they're going to be replacing the N77 steel with M390, which is a really fantastic steel anyway, so no worries there. Let me give you a quick size comparison here before we end this, and you're going to see, I think, where honestly some of the market influences are for these knives. This is my Shirogorov Model 95T. You guys know I absolutely love this knife. Lightning fast, fantastic build quality. And here we have it right up against both of these. And there we go. So we see the Shiro is just a little bit larger. Pretty much the same dimensions as far as the thickness. Blade steel on the Shiro is thicker, so the frames are set further apart than on the Carsons. Now here's the thing. This Shirogorov, before all the bullshit started happening, secondary market and all the other crap, this was about a $600 knife. Now you're going to pay $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 for them, but you can't go by that. That's terribly... Oh, I guess I cut myself at some point somewhere. My apologies for that. So you have to go, MSRP versus MSRP. MSRP on this was about $600. At least that's what we paid in the US for them. I'm sure in Russia they were cheaper. These are going to be running you, and this is the part that's going to scare a lot of people, $450 to $500 depending on the size and the steel. Now when the M390 comes into the picture, the price point is going to get lower. So I would expect probably $25 to $40 lower when they change the steel. Now it's up to you. Is it worth spending $475 to $500 on a product made in China? Now we're seeing the quality of the components. That would dictate the price. We're seeing the assembly, which seems to be fantastic. I don't see any quality control issues here. There's no blade play on either one of these. Boy, I am just bleeding all over the place. I'm going to have to clean the hell out of these knives. My apologies, Ulyan. They say once a knife has bitten you, it's yours, though. We may have to work on that, so that's going to have to get cleaned off. All right, so that's the second video I've cut myself on. You guys are bad luck. All right, so all in all, I think they're really nice knives. I would just prefer to see them about 30 to 40% lower in price, given the fact that the consumer does not have the knowledge of the product yet. Let it build a name and then start working it up. Or add more things, maybe some anodization options or things like that at that same price point. But it's up to you to choose. You are able to get them. They're only sold by 2 distributors, and Ulyan is one of them. So I would suggest contacting him and make up your own mind. There's not a lot of information out there about them right now. I've given you everything that I was able to research. So hopefully you guys will have a good experience with yours. I think it's a fun knife. I think it's a really good EDC with some nice safety features. You just have to decide if it's worth the money for you. I can't make up your mind for you. All right, guys, I'm going to go and continue to bleed all through the house till I figure out what the hell I did. And I'll see you guys on the next video.